The restaurant was alive with chatter and the clinking of glasses. Soft golden lights bathed the tables, making the place feel warm and inviting. It was one of those restaurants where the city's elite liked to dine, where every corner seemed polished and every waiter moved with careful precision. Among them was a young waitress, carrying herself with a quiet grace despite the long hours and constant demands of her job. She moved from table to table, balancing plates and glasses, smiling politely at the guests. She had been working there for a few years, and though the job was tiring, she took pride in the small things. The way a guest's face would light up when she brought their favorite dish, or the simple, genuine thank you she sometimes received. That evening, the restaurant was busier than usual. A group of people in expensive suits and dresses had come in, their laughter filling the room. The waitress noticed one man standing out among them. He was tall, well-dressed, and carried himself with the kind of confidence that seemed almost intimidating. His gaze swept the room as if it were his personal stage, and every movement he made drew attention. He walked up to a table near the center, where the waitress had just served a fresh plate of pasta to a couple celebrating an anniversary. He ordered a drink, and there was something in his tone that made it clear he expected perfection. She approached his table with a smile, holding a small notepad. "Good evening, sir. What can I get for you tonight?" "I want something special," he said, his voice smooth but commanding. "Make it unique, make it memorable, and make sure it's done right." She nodded politely, writing down his order. She had served many demanding guests before, but something about him felt different. He wasn't just particular. He seemed intent on finding a flaw, and the way he looked at her made her stomach tighten slightly. She walked to the bar to place his order, trying to steady her hands. As she returned, she noticed the other guests at nearby tables glancing at the interaction. The millionaire had a way of drawing attention without even trying. When she set the drink in front of him, he raised an eyebrow. "Is this all you've got? I expected something more impressive. Can't you do better than this?" His tone carried a mix of amusement and condescension, and a few diners nearby exchanged quiet glances, sensing the tension. She kept her smile, her voice calm. "I can bring you another option, sir. Would you like me to suggest something different?" He leaned back, smirking. "No, I want to see what you can do. Let's test your skill." For a moment, she felt a flush of embarrassment, but she quickly reminded herself that she had handled tough guests before. She returned to the bar, carefully preparing another drink. The staff around her were watching, some concerned about how the situation would unfold. When she brought the new drink to his table, he took a sip and made a face. Not bad, but it's still lacking. I expected more." The waitress remained composed, though her hands shook slightly. She knew this man wasn't interested in enjoying a drink. He wanted to make her feel small. Despite that, she kept her professionalism, offering polite suggestions and answering his questions about the menu. With every comment he made, she felt the eyes of the restaurant on her, and it was exhausting, but she refused to let him see her falter. As the evening progressed, he continued to make small, cutting remarks. At one point, he asked her about her education, and when she answered simply, he chuckled. "You're just a waitress, then? I expected someone more refined." His words were sharp, designed to humiliate rather than inquire. She swallowed, keeping her expression neutral, and turned to take another order from a nearby table, hoping to regain a sense of normalcy. Despite the challenging guest, the waitress found small moments of comfort. In the corner of the restaurant, there was a piano that occasionally played soft background music. She had always been drawn to it, and even in the midst of the stress, her eyes kept drifting toward it. She remembered how, in quieter moments, she would sit at that piano and let her fingers move across the keys, losing herself in the melodies. It was her private escape, her small source of joy amidst the daily grind. She moved through her shift, serving other guests with a steady hand, all the while aware of the millionaire's presence. He was sharp, observant, and relentless in his attempts to undermine her, but she noticed something else too. For all his confidence, there was a certain curiosity in his eyes, a hint that he was not used to being challenged. That realization gave her a quiet sense of control. She couldn't let him see it, but she knew that no matter how harsh his words were, they couldn't touch the parts of her that truly mattered. The other diners started to notice the tension as well. Some exchanged looks, whispering quietly about the man's behavior. The waitress, sensing their empathy, felt a surge of determination. She decided that no matter what happened, she would not allow herself to be humiliated. She moved with grace and confidence, her every action demonstrating her professionalism and composure. As the night went on, the millionaire continued to test her patience, asking increasingly difficult questions and making subtle jabs at her abilities. Yet, with every challenge, she met it calmly, offering thoughtful responses and maintaining her dignity. It became clear to those watching that she was not easily shaken, and slowly, the atmosphere around their interaction began to shift. The tension that had been one-sided started to balance out, as the other guests recognized her strength and resilience. By the time the dinner rush was over, the millionaire had drawn quite a crowd around his table. People were curious to see how this confrontation would end. The waitress, exhausted but undeterred, finally took a brief moment to breathe. She glanced at the piano once more, feeling that familiar pull of inspiration. It was a small reminder that there was more to her than this moment of stress and judgment. Her talent, her passion, and her inner strength were still hers, untouched and waiting for the right moment to shine. The millionaire, satisfied that he had tested her enough for now, finally leaned back in his chair with a smirk. He believed he had made his point, confident that he had left an impression. But the waitress, carrying herself with quiet dignity, knew the evening was far from over. She had endured his attempts to belittle her, and she had done so with grace. Deep inside, she felt a sense of anticipation, a growing excitement that soon, the tables would turn. There was a part of her that the millionaire had not yet seen, a part that no arrogance or condescension could ever touch. As she cleaned the last few tables and prepared for the end of her shift, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. The night had been challenging, but it had also been a reminder of her resilience and her quiet strength. She looked around the restaurant, taking in the soft glow of the lights and the lingering chatter of the patrons. Tomorrow would bring another day, and perhaps another test, but she was ready. She had faced humiliation and pressure tonight and had come through with her dignity intact. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, she knew that her moment to truly shine was just beginning. The restaurant settled into a quieter rhythm after the busy dinner rush, but the millionaire remained, his presence still commanding attention. The waitress wiped down tables, moving carefully between the chairs, aware of the man's sharp eyes tracking her every motion. She had thought the worst of his criticism was over, but there was a sense that he had only just begun testing her patience. His posture was relaxed, but the slight curl of his lips hinted at the amusement he took in making others feel uneasy. He beckoned her over again, a small, deliberate motion. She approached with careful steps, holding her notepad with a steady hand. "Can I get you anything else, sir?" she asked politely, her voice calm and even. He looked her up and down, as if weighing her worth. "I'm curious," he said, leaning slightly forward. "Do you have any real skills? Or is serving tables the only thing you can do?" The words hit with a sharp edge. A few guests nearby glanced at the exchange, their eyes widening at the audacity of his tone. The waitress's lips pressed into a thin line, but she kept her composure. "I have many interests, sir. I work hard here, but I also have personal passions that I pursue outside of work." He raised an eyebrow. "Passions, huh? Well, I'd like to see one of them. Let's make it interesting. If you can impress me, I might change my opinion about you." The waitress felt a flicker of both anxiety and determination. She had a talent that very few knew about, one that gave her a sense of peace and pride whenever she practiced. The piano, tucked in a corner of the restaurant, had been her secret companion for years. Only a few colleagues knew how deeply her fingers could dance over the keys, and she had never shared her music with a demanding guest, or with anyone who could try to belittle her. He noticed her hesitation and leaned closer, his tone both mocking and challenging. "Don't just stand there. Show me something." or admit that all you are is a waitress who thinks she can talk big. The room felt smaller, the space between them charged with tension. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the lights and the quiet hum of the restaurant around her. Every eye in the place seemed to turn toward her, but she refused to let fear rule her. With a calm voice, she said, "If you would like, I can play something for you. There's a piano over there." He chuckled softly, a sound meant to dismiss her. "A piano? That's your talent? Go ahead then. Show me what a waitress can do." She nodded and walked toward the corner where the piano stood. Her steps were steady, but inside her heart, her pulse raced. She lifted the cover of the keys, feeling the familiar texture beneath her fingers. A hush fell over the room. The guests who had been chatting quietly now turned their attention toward the unfolding scene. The millionaire leaned back in his chair, watching with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Her fingers touched the keys gently at first, testing the sound. Then she let herself get lost in the music. Notes flowed, soft and steady, creating a melody that filled the restaurant. The tension in the air shifted. The sharp edges of the millionaire's presence seemed to dull as the beauty of the music took hold. Patrons leaned back in their chairs, listening, some with their eyes closed, allowing the sounds to wash over them. As she played, her confidence grew. The melody swelled, moving from delicate whispers to bold, expressive notes. She could feel the energy in the room change. Guests who had been tense with curiosity now smiled, some nodding subtly in appreciation. The waitress herself felt a quiet joy she hadn't experienced in years, a reminder that her abilities were not defined by anyone else's opinion. The millionaire's smirk faded as he listened. The careful arrogance in his eyes was replaced with something he did not expect: astonishment. He had thought he could intimidate or humiliate her, but her skill was undeniable. The music was not just beautiful. It carried a depth of emotion that left him momentarily speechless. He tried to compose himself, but it was clear even to him that he had underestimated her. A few moments of silence followed, broken only by the lingering resonance of the piano. The waitress concluded her piece with a flourish, and the room erupted in soft applause. It wasn't loud or forced. It was genuine, a collective recognition of her talent. She turned slightly, acknowledging the appreciation with a humble smile, her cheeks warmed by the unexpected praise. The millionaire sat quietly, absorbing the scene. For the first time that evening, his expression was unreadable. He had intended to dominate and belittle, but instead, he had witnessed something authentic, something that he could not control or diminish. The realization settled slowly in him that the waitress was more than her job, more than the uniform she wore. She possessed a talent and confidence that were entirely her own. Some of the diners, emboldened by the moment, whispered among themselves. Comments of admiration and surprise filled the space around him. The power dynamic had shifted. The millionaire's attempt to humiliate had backfired, leaving the waitress in a position of quiet authority. Her composure and skill had turned the evening into a showcase of her abilities, and the contrast between his arrogance and her grace was stark. She rose from the piano, letting the final note fade into the air. Her posture was calm and confident, a subtle declaration that she would not be diminished by anyone. The applause continued, and she allowed herself a small, private sense of satisfaction. This was her moment, a moment that validated the years she had spent practicing, the patience she had cultivated, and the dignity she had maintained despite difficult circumstances. The millionaire cleared his throat, finally speaking, though his voice lacked its usual sharpness. "I didn't expect that," he admitted. His words, though few, carried an honest respect that he had not shown before. He had been confronted with something genuine, a reminder that true talent and character could not be measured by wealth or status. The waitress gave a small nod, acknowledging his comment without arrogance or gloating. She had shown her skill, and that was enough. She returned to her work, taking orders and serving tables with the same calm professionalism as before, but now with an added layer of confidence. The other diners continued to offer discreet smiles and polite compliments, recognizing the grace with which she had handled the challenge. As the night wore on, the atmosphere in the restaurant remained lively but different. The tension that had marked the earlier interactions had softened into a sense of admiration and respect. The millionaire, while still present, was no longer the dominating force he had been at the start. The waitress had claimed her space not through confrontation or words, but through talent, dignity, and quiet strength. Her shift ended eventually, and she prepared to leave, feeling a mix of exhaustion and fulfillment. The evening had been a test of patience and poise, and she had passed with flying colors. Walking out into the cool night air, she allowed herself a moment to reflect on the unexpected turn of events. She had faced humiliation, pressure, and doubt, and had emerged with her self-respect intact. The memory of the piano's melody lingered in her mind, a comforting reminder that her true worth was not defined by the opinions of others. The millionaire watched her leave, a thoughtful expression on his face. The night had been intended to assert dominance, to provoke, to belittle, but it had transformed into an encounter that challenged his assumptions. He had seen something remarkable, a person who carried strength and talent in quiet, unassuming ways, capable of turning a moment of attempted humiliation into one of undeniable beauty and dignity. In the days that followed, the restaurant carried a subtle shift in energy. Patrons who had witnessed the evening spoke in hushed tones of the waitress who had played the piano and captivated everyone in the room. Her colleagues treated her with quiet admiration, and even the millionaire, if he returned, would carry with him a sense of respect that had been earned through skill and composure rather than wealth or influence. The evening remained a testament to the power of resilience, grace, and the unassuming strength that lies within those who are often underestimated. After the piano melody faded and the applause settled, a quiet stillness hung in the restaurant. The warm glow of the lights seemed brighter somehow, and the atmosphere had shifted from tension to admiration. The millionaire remained seated, his usual confidence tempered by an unfamiliar sense of respect. He had thought he could intimidate the young waitress, but her talent had spoken louder than his words ever could. The waitress returned to her duties, carrying plates and drinks, but there was a subtle change in her movements. She moved with a new lightness, as if the act of playing the piano had freed her from the weight of his judgment. Guests watched her with renewed interest, some whispering to each other about the remarkable skill they had just witnessed. She greeted them with her usual polite smile, but beneath it, a quiet pride glimmered. The millionaire's curiosity was clearly piqued. He had assumed his wealth and position would give him control over anyone he met, yet here was someone who had defied him simply by being herself. He watched her navigate the room, noticing how effortlessly she balanced professionalism with her newfound confidence. There was a grace in the way she moved, an elegance that could not be taught or bought. He called her over once more, his voice softer than before. "You play well," he admitted, the usual edge replaced by genuine intrigue. "Better than I expected." She acknowledged the compliment with a small nod, keeping her tone neutral. "Thank you, sir. I'm glad you enjoyed it." He leaned back, studying her carefully. "I didn't think a waitress could possess that kind of skill. It's unexpected." The words were awkward, lacking the smooth confidence he usually projected, but the meaning was clear. He was genuinely surprised, and perhaps a little unsettled. The waitress, sensing the shift, remained composed. She had no desire to humiliate him in return, only to maintain her dignity and continue doing what she loved. As the evening progressed, she found herself drawn back to the piano during quieter moments. Each time she approached it, more guests turned their attention, curious about the music that had already captured their admiration. She began to play again, this time allowing herself to explore the keys more freely, letting her fingers move with confidence and emotion. The melody flowed, soft at first, then rising in intensity, filling the restaurant with a sense of wonder and beauty. The millionaire watched, his earlier skepticism fading entirely. He realized that this was not just a simple display of talent. It was an expression of the waitress's heart and spirit. Her music carried a depth that he had not expected, a mixture of passion, practice, and innate skill. He felt a rare humility, recognizing that his attempts to assert dominance had been futile in the face of such authenticity. Other diners leaned in, captivated by the performance. Some whispered words of admiration, while others simply closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. The waitress's ability to command attention without raising her voice, to inspire awe through her hands alone, was remarkable. She had turned a situation meant to demean her into a moment of triumph, and everyone in the room could sense it. The millionaire found himself reflecting on his own behavior. He had expected to be the center of attention, to dominate the room with his presence and wealth, but here was someone who needed nothing from him to shine. It was a lesson he had not anticipated, and it left him both impressed and introspective. He realized that confidence and talent, when combined with humility, could create a power far greater than arrogance or money. The waitress finished her piece with a flourish, letting the final notes linger in the air. Applause broke out again, more enthusiastic than before. This time, it was not just polite recognition. It was genuine appreciation for her skill and composure. She stood, breathing lightly, a serene smile on her face. The energy in the restaurant had shifted completely, and it was clear that the dynamic between her and the millionaire had changed forever. He rose from his seat, approaching her cautiously. "I must admit you've surprised me," he said, his tone sincere. "I underestimated you." She accepted the acknowledgement gracefully, nodding in response. "Thank you, sir. I'm glad you enjoyed the music." There was no need for further words. The encounter had spoken volumes. The guests continued to watch, some murmuring their approval, while others returned to their own meals, still carrying a sense of awe from what they had witnessed. The waitress had turned a moment meant for humiliation into one of personal triumph, demonstrating that skill and character could not be diminished by arrogance. As the evening drew to a close, she continued her duties, serving the remaining patrons with care and professionalism. The millionaire, now seated quietly, observed her with a newfound respect. He had intended to assert control and prove superiority, but instead, he had learned a lesson in humility and the power of unassuming talent. Her music had created a space where judgment held no sway, where authenticity and dedication were the true measures of worth. The other staff members, who had watched the interactions unfold, felt a renewed admiration for their colleague. They had seen how she handled pressure, how she maintained her dignity, and how she allowed her talent to shine despite the circumstances. It was a moment that would be remembered by everyone present, a testament to resilience, grace, and the quiet power of skill. The waitress took a moment to herself, reflecting on the evening. She had faced attempts to belittle her, yet she had remained steadfast. The piano had been her refuge, her way to assert her identity in a world that often judged too quickly. Playing for the guests had not only revealed her talent, but had also reminded her of her own strength and perseverance. She glanced at the millionaire one last time before finishing her shift. He met her gaze briefly, an unspoken understanding passing between them. His expression held a mix of admiration and contemplation, acknowledging that he had been challenged in a way he had not expected. She had not only withstood his scrutiny but had transformed it into an opportunity to showcase her true self. As she left the restaurant that night, the cool evening air felt refreshing. She walked with a sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had navigated a difficult situation with grace and skill. The memory of the piano and the music she had played would remain with her, a reminder of her abilities and the respect she had earned through quiet strength. The millionaire, left alone in the restaurant, considered the events of the evening. He had learned that wealth and authority could not compel admiration or respect where talent and integrity were present. The young waitress had shown him a lesson in humility and the power of genuine skill. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of awe toward someone outside his usual sphere of influence. In the days that followed, the story of the waitress who had captivated the restaurant with her piano playing spread quietly among the staff and patrons. People spoke of her talent, her composure, and the way she had handled a challenging situation with dignity. It became a subtle reminder that true ability and character could not be judged by appearances or social standing, and that moments of adversity could reveal strength and grace that might otherwise remain unseen. The waitress continued her work with renewed confidence, knowing that her skills and her character had been recognized in a meaningful way. The experience had reinforced her belief in herself and in the value of perseverance and authenticity. She had faced an intimidating challenge and had turned it into a triumph, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had witnessed it. Her talent had spoken louder than words, and in doing so, it had transformed the evening into an unforgettable story of resilience and inner strength. The restaurant had settled into a calm rhythm after the evening rush, but the energy remained charged from the recent piano performance. Guests still whispered among themselves, some returning to their meals with lingering admiration, others quietly replaying the experience in their minds. The young waitress moved among them with ease, her confidence bolstered by the reaction she had received. Every smile, every nod of approval she received reinforced the sense that she had turned a difficult situation into something memorable and empowering. The millionaire, seated at a corner table, watched her with an expression that had changed completely since he had first arrived. The sharpness in his eyes was softened by a mix of surprise and contemplation. He had come expecting to dominate, to assert his power over someone he deemed beneath him. Instead, he had witnessed a display of talent and poise that challenged his assumptions. He felt a strange mix of humility and respect, emotions he rarely allowed himself to experience. He called her over once again, this time with a less commanding, more curious tone. "I must admit, your piano playing is remarkable," he said. "I had no idea someone in your position could possess such skill." She paused briefly, acknowledging the compliment with a calm nod. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that." He leaned back, studying her carefully. It's rare to see someone so talented and yet so grounded. Most people with such abilities would flaunt them. You handle it with grace. The waitress smiled faintly, a mixture of humility and quiet pride in her expression. She had learned over the years that true skill did not need to be shouted or displayed for recognition. It existed in the quiet moments, in the dedication to practice, and in the joy of sharing it when the right moment presented itself. This moment was one of those rare occasions. As she continued her work, she found herself thinking about the piano and the way her music had captivated the room. She had always known her talent was special, but seeing the effect it had on the diners and, more unexpectedly, on the millionaire, gave her a renewed sense of purpose. It was not about proving herself to him or to anyone else. It was about recognizing her own abilities and using them to create moments of beauty in the world. The millionaire observed quietly as she interacted with other guests, noticing the subtle ways she commanded attention without demanding it. Her presence was calm, confident, and approachable. He began to realize that her strength was not just in her music but in her character. The way she navigated the evening with dignity and patience had left an impression on him that went far beyond the piano keys. For a moment, he reflected on his own behavior. He had come into the restaurant expecting to assert dominance, to test someone he considered inferior. But the evening had turned into a lesson he had not anticipated. He had underestimated her, and in doing so, he had been confronted with the power of humility and talent combined. It was a reminder that true influence did not come from wealth or status alone but from authenticity and skill. The waitress noticed the change in his demeanor but chose not to comment. She had no desire to humiliate him or assert superiority. Her focus remained on her work and the satisfaction of doing it well. Yet, there was a quiet sense of triumph in knowing that she had maintained her dignity and shared her talent under pressure. It was a subtle victory, one that required no fanfare but spoke volumes about her character. Throughout the rest of the evening, she continued to find opportunities to play the piano. Each time she sat at the keys, the room seemed to transform. The music created an atmosphere of warmth and admiration, drawing attention naturally without any need for force or intimidation. The guests responded with genuine appreciation, and even the millionaire found himself drawn into the melodies, listening intently and occasionally nodding in recognition of her skill. The effect of her talent was evident not only in the reactions of the guests but also in the atmosphere of the restaurant. Staff members who had been tense earlier now moved with a renewed sense of energy, inspired by the way she had handled the situation. The performance had become more than just a display of skill. It was a moment of leadership, of showing others how to respond to pressure with grace and confidence. The millionaire approached her one final time before leaving for the evening. His expression was thoughtful, a mixture of admiration and reflection. "I came here expecting to test you, to see if you could handle scrutiny," he said quietly. "But I leave having learned something important. You have talent, yes, but more importantly, you have composure and dignity. That is rare." The waitress accepted his words with a polite nod, understanding that acknowledgement was enough. She had no need for praise or validation. Her sense of accomplishment came from within. She had faced a challenge, navigated it with skill and grace, and emerged with her confidence intact. The experience had reinforced her understanding of her own worth and the value of staying true to herself. As the millionaire departed, a subtle sense of respect lingered in the air. The guests and staff who had witnessed the evening's events continued to talk quietly among themselves, reflecting on the remarkable display of talent and character. The waitress returned to her duties, carrying herself with the same calm professionalism but now with a renewed sense of pride. She had transformed a potentially humiliating encounter into a moment of empowerment and inspiration. In the following days, the story of the evening spread quietly among the restaurant's regular patrons and staff. People spoke of the young waitress who had captivated everyone with her piano playing and maintained her dignity under pressure. The memory of her performance became a source of inspiration, a reminder that talent, humility, and perseverance could create moments that left a lasting impression. The waitress continued her work with a steady hand and a quiet confidence, knowing that her abilities and character had been recognized in a meaningful way. She had faced adversity and emerged stronger, demonstrating that true skill and grace could not be diminished by attempts to belittle or intimidate. The experience had not only revealed her talent to others, but had also reaffirmed her own belief in herself. The millionaire, though no longer present, had left a lasting impact as well. He had witnessed firsthand the power of humility, talent, and composure, and the lesson would stay with him. The evening had transformed his perspective, showing him that respect and admiration were earned through authenticity and skill rather than authority and wealth. As she closed the restaurant at the end of her shift, the waitress felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had navigated a challenging situation, shared her passion, and emerged with her dignity intact. The piano had been her voice, and through it, she had communicated her strength and talent without a single word. It was a victory that belonged entirely to her, a testament to the power of perseverance and self-belief. Walking into the cool night air, she reflected on the events of the evening. She had faced humiliation, pressure, and skepticism, yet she had maintained her composure and shared her gift with the world. The experience had reinforced her confidence and reminded her of the value of staying true to herself, no matter the circumstances. Her talent had spoken volumes, leaving a lasting impression on all who had witnessed it, and she knew that this was only the beginning of her journey toward recognition and fulfillment. The restaurant had returned to its usual rhythm by the next evening, but something had changed in the air. Patrons who had been present the previous night still whispered quietly about the young waitress who had captured everyone's attention with her piano playing. Even those who hadn't been there had heard tales of the performance, and a subtle excitement lingered among the staff. She moved among the tables with the same calm professionalism as always, but now there was a quiet confidence in her steps, a glow in her expression that spoke of her inner strength. The millionaire had returned, though his demeanor was different this time. The sharp arrogance that had defined his first visit had softened into a cautious curiosity. He watched the waitress as she moved through the restaurant, taking orders and serving guests with grace and efficiency. There was something in the way she carried herself, a balance of humility and self-assurance, that intrigued him. He had come expecting to assert dominance, but instead, he found himself quietly observing, waiting to see what other surprises she might have. As the evening unfolded, the waitress continued her work, serving guests and ensuring that everyone's experience was pleasant. She moved from table to table, balancing plates and glasses, her eyes bright with focus and energy. The atmosphere in the restaurant was warm and welcoming, and it seemed that her presence had become a central part of that feeling. Guests responded to her attentiveness, offering polite smiles and compliments, many of them curious about the talent that had been whispered about the night before. At one point, she noticed the piano in the corner of the restaurant, bathed in the soft glow of the lights. It called to her as it always had, a source of solace and expression. She approached it, feeling the familiar texture of the keys beneath her fingers. The room fell into a quiet anticipation. The other guests seemed to sense that something special was about to happen. She began to play, softly at first, allowing the melody to fill the space with gentle, soothing notes. As the music grew, the room transformed. Guests leaned back in their chairs, listening intently, some closing their eyes to fully immerse themselves in the sound. The millionaire, seated at his table, listened with a thoughtful expression. The arrogance that had once defined his demeanor was gone, replaced by genuine appreciation and a hint of awe. He had come to see her as a challenge to conquer, but he now understood that her talent and character were beyond any test he could devise. The melody continued, rising and falling in a beautiful, expressive flow. The waitress allowed herself to get lost in the music, her fingers moving effortlessly across the keys. It was a performance not just of skill, but of emotion, of heart and soul poured into every note. The guests were captivated, and even the staff paused in their duties to listen, drawn in by the power and authenticity of her playing. When she finished, the room erupted in applause, genuine and heartfelt. The atmosphere was electric with admiration and respect. The waitress rose from the piano with a serene smile, acknowledging the recognition with quiet grace. She had shared her talent fully, and the response was overwhelming in the most positive way. The millionaire rose from his chair, approaching her with a mixture of humility and admiration. "I have to admit," he said, his voice sincere, "I was wrong to judge you. You have a talent that is extraordinary. And more than that, you carry yourself with dignity and confidence that is rare to see." She nodded politely, her expression calm and composed. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate your words." He paused, studying her carefully. "I came here thinking I could belittle you, but instead, I am the one who has been humbled. You've shown me that true skill and character cannot be measured by appearances or status." The waitress smiled gently, understanding the weight of his words but not needing to respond further. She had proven herself not through confrontation or argument, but through talent, composure, and the simple act of being herself. Her performance had spoken volumes, leaving an impression that would not be forgotten. Throughout the rest of the evening, she continued her work with a renewed sense of purpose. The atmosphere in the restaurant remained vibrant, energized by her presence and the memory of her music. Guests were engaged, staff were inspired, and even the millionaire seemed more reflective, his demeanor softened by the experience. The restaurant had become more than just a place to eat. It was a space where talent, humility, and integrity were on full display. As the night drew to a close, the waitress prepared to leave. She reflected on the events of the past 2 evenings, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. She had faced challenges, navigated difficult interactions, and shared her gift with the world, emerging with her dignity and confidence intact. The piano had been her voice, her way of expressing herself when words were not enough, and it had served her beautifully. The millionaire, now ready to depart, approached her one last time. "I will not forget this experience," he said quietly. "You've reminded me of the power of talent, humility, and perseverance. I hope you continue to share your gift with the world." She accepted his words with a nod, a quiet acknowledgement of the respect that had been earned. She did not need to seek validation. Her fulfillment came from knowing that she had stayed true to herself and used her abilities to create moments of beauty and inspiration. The encounter had been transformative not only for her but also for those who had witnessed it, including the millionaire. Walking into the cool night air, the waitress felt a sense of peace and accomplishment. She had turned a potentially humiliating situation into an opportunity for expression and empowerment. Her talent had been recognized, her character had been admired, and she had left a lasting impression on everyone present. The experience had reaffirmed her belief in herself and her abilities, reminding her that true strength lay in authenticity, skill, and grace. The story of the evening spread quietly among the restaurant's patrons and staff in the days that followed. People spoke of the young waitress who had captivated everyone with her piano playing and maintained her dignity under pressure. It became a source of inspiration, a testament to the power of perseverance, confidence, and the quiet strength that resides within those who are often underestimated. The waitress continued her work with steady hands and a calm heart, knowing that her abilities and character had left a meaningful impact. She had faced adversity, showcased her talent, and emerged with her dignity intact. Her journey was far from over, but the experience had strengthened her resolve and reinforced her belief in the value of staying true to oneself. Even the millionaire, reflecting on the encounter, carried the lesson with him. He had come expecting to assert power, but he had been reminded that influence and respect cannot be demanded. They must be earned through authenticity, skill, and integrity. The young waitress had shown him that in the most elegant and unassuming way. The waitress, leaving the restaurant behind for the night, felt the quiet satisfaction of someone who had met a challenge and risen above it. She had faced attempts at humiliation, pressure, and judgment, and had responded with grace, talent, and inner strength. Her piano had been her voice, and through it, she had communicated something far more powerful than words. It was a reminder that true skill, character, and perseverance can leave a lasting mark, inspiring others and transforming even the most challenging circumstances into moments of triumph and recognition.